All right. Sarri Gillman, thank you for joining Brave Voices.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah, just do a little bleep about Brave Voices so those who are joining us know that we are committed to breaking the cycle of silence that perpetuates childhood sexual abuse. We choose to think, listen, learn, and speak about this uncomfortable subject in order to contribute to the reduction of harm of future generations. We cannot expect a child to talk about a subject they do not hear discussed. Our goal is to normalize the conversation. So thank you, Sarri, for coming. Can I just quickly do a little intro about you, or would you like to?
Sure, that'd be
Yeah?
great.
Okay, great. Sarri Gillman is a psychotherapist, author, TEDx speaker, and workshop presenter. She's the author of The Mystery of Knowing Journal from 2020 and Transform Your Boundaries, 2014, and Naming and Taming Overwhelm for Healthcare and Human Service Providers, 2017. She runs a private practice on Whidbey Island and devotes the rest of her time to teaching on the subject of boundaries and overwhelm recovery. A little bit about her background is pretty amazing. Her humanitarian work includes founding 2 nonprofits and running nonprofits for 20 years. Her focus was on homelessness and serving children and teens. She then went on to teach leadership development for 7 years to executives and managers. Her extensive work with people led her to conclude that we have lots to do to clarify our boundaries, improve our self-care, and face the things that are overwhelming. Today, Sarri no longer runs nonprofits. She is focused on how overwhelm and boundaries are impacting the people who work inside of organizations in healthcare, human services, and education. She's completely devoted to teaching about boundaries and recovery from overwhelm. And I have been blessed to be on retreat with Sarri on Whidbey Island. And I have my little compass coin, wooden compass coin, which I'm imagining that we might hear about. So that's you, Sarri. How does it hear to hear all that?
Oh, it makes me feel older than I am. But it also feels like, it's been kind of a life devoted to very specific things. And this is very meaningful to me. So I really appreciate you inviting me into this conversation, because I think boundaries touches every aspect of our lives. And it's an honor to continue to have this be kind of the theme of what I focus on and to share that with you. So, and I know you've become a real believer, expert in boundaries in your own life as a result. And that to me is the whole gig, is how do we all become better with boundaries in our lives? Yeah.
Ongoing work, that is for sure. Right now I'm caring for my 93-year-old father. And I'm going to get this big gold star. I'm doing so well, because how do I have self-care while caring for him, while working, while doing Brave Voices? And I am so grateful for the skills that I've been incorporating over the last 2+ years since I've worked with you.
I actually have giant gold stars in my office. One's for you now.
Oh, thank you. So today we're focused specifically on creating and improving our skills for those of us who were harmed sexually as children, and for adults who want to raise their children with these amazing skills. So yeah, I just can't wait to hear. So let's just jump in and start with the questions here. Yeah, right. So in all of your years of experience, what have you found to be the greatest barrier to survivors, thrivers, as I like to call myself, Setting boundaries.
I would say there are a couple things. And one, unfortunately, is what I call bad therapy. Therapists who never covered the ground with people on that end of recovery, and even therapists who gave up on clients because that, like thinking they'll never be able to do it. Like, and maybe that's because the therapists themselves didn't know how to do it, obviously. But teaching boundaries and boundary recovery is actually very tricky. And I work with therapists on training them because I've seen so many mistakes and so many people who have been survivors of being harmed are, can go to a very shattered place inside. And in that shattered place, everything comes apart, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's this shattered place inside.
Yeah.
And I have watched so many people heal that I know that it just takes longer. So those who are harmed, it takes longer to recover boundaries in your life. But once you get there, you're able to do it just like anybody else can do it. But coming from a shattered place is a longer journey to put pieces of yourself back together, to be able to have enough of you there to be able to hold a boundary. And but what I've learned from people is never give up. All of us are born with this inner sense of a yes and no, and no one can take that from you, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you have been through. It is still inside of you. You have the ability to have a no and have a yes. And it just takes more time to recover that sense of it for you and feel like you have permission to have these choices in your life. And that's really what boundary work is. It's about all of us understanding choices and respecting other people's choices and respecting our own. But it is a recovery and healing process to move from shattered place to really knowing that underneath the shattered place, there's a little voice in there. And it may start out being very, very little, but there's a voice in there that says, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. Or I love this. I want more of this. and so our job is to tune in and trust that little voice inside. Because also when you've been harmed, it can be very hard to trust yourself. Because part of developing that ability of trusting ourselves in our bodies comes up with us as we are children. And if we've been harmed as children or adolescents sexually, then we may not have that trust in our body. And it may take a little while to also recover that sense that what you're hearing from inside is something you can trust. That is truth. That is your voice. And that's why I love that you call this organization Brave Voices, because this is a voice recovery of hearing that voice inside of you that says, I want more, or I don't want to do this. This is a no for me, or I hate this job. Why am I still working at this? And once you start trusting that, that's where your wisdom comes from. And all of us have wisdom in our life. And so although I've done a lot of work with boundaries and people think of me as a boundaries expert, I don't think of myself that way. I think of it as an ongoing journey. And I think of everyone as a boundaries expert. Everyone has the ability. But what I've seen that has, I think, really upset me the most over the years is I've watched people go to therapy who had been harmed as kids and have this shattered place inside. And I've watched therapists not know how to take that place with them and help them hear themselves and trust themselves and regain that sense. So, so sometimes they just think, well, I can't, I just don't have any boundaries. I just don't know how to do this. I've heard that a lot from people. I don't have any boundaries. I don't know how to do this. And I kind of laugh inside when I hear that, because I know they believe that's true, but I know that they were born with that. Just like you were born with skin on your body.
Yeah.
You're born with this. This isn't something you can opt out of or think you don't have any, or that anyone can take from you.
Well, what I'm thinking of, and when you're sharing this right now, is that I do believe we all come into this world who we are, and we're rocking it. And then, at least I'll speak specifically for myself, knock after control, and not having my feelings and my yeses and my nos be accepted or acknowledged, that causes that mistrust of self, and am I worthy of, is it okay that I listen to my yes and my no? I may have a strong yes, but then all of this overriding shoulds, guilt,
doubt,
yeah,
shame
right,
for feeling your own yes and no.
yeah,
all of that comes in.
yeah, shame
And
for wanting my yes.
right, that you're not really allowed to have more than this.
How could I be so
Absolutely.
selfish? How could I be so selfish? Yeah.
So we work through all of that. It's part of the healing.
Baby steps, right?
Yes. Yes. I believe in baby steps for anything that we learn, right? Just very small bits at a time.
Yeah. And so I think I'm just answered my next question, which is what prevents survivors, thrivers from setting boundaries? And
yeah. Well, a lot of that is the fear. So put fear in big capitals, fear of disappointing someone, fear of people getting angry, fear that you're not really allowed to have that much of yourself. How dare I? Who do I think I am? You're so full of yourself. This is so selfish, but it's all about this fear zone. And when we, that's also why I love what you call brave voices, because we have to move through fear. And actually, anytime we're setting boundaries, we have to confront fear. Because that comes up for me all the time. It is, this fear that people won't like you, that they won't love you, that they'll go away, that you'll be rejected, that you'll be fired. So fear is really big, but we have to acknowledge that we feel afraid. And my little trick for dealing with it is figure out what you're most afraid of. I am most afraid of disappointing people. I already know that. I got that from my grandfather. I was very afraid of disappointing him. And I'm very afraid of disappointing people. So I call my fear out before I say no to something. I just say, hey, I know this is going to be probably disappointing for you, but I'm saying no to this. Now I've put my fear in the room with us. I don't have to worry about it jumping out at me through anyone else, because I've invited it in as a into the room as kind of a player in the scene with us. And so I already know that that's probably part of it. And sometimes the other person is like, oh, it's not that disappointing, I'll get over it. That's fine. Or sometimes they're like, yeah, it's pretty disappointing. But whatever they're having as their own experience, I'm not sweating through the disappointment. I'm able to just say, yeah, this is disappointing.
Yeah. For me, I think it's not wanting to make someone feel bad or
yeah. So a way to do that is to say, I hope this doesn't make you feel bad, but I'm saying no. So now you've called it out. I hope this doesn't make you feel bad. But in reality, Cheryl, you're not in control of how everybody feels. So they're going to feel how they feel, but you've called out your fear.
Yeah.
I hope this, this may make you feel bad. And I that's not my intention. I hope this doesn't make you feel bad, but.
And what do you think about, rather than say, I hope it doesn't, but I fear this is going to make you feel bad or sad or,
I would keep that back.
okay.
So I don't say to people, I fear this will be disappointing. I just say, this may be
This
disappointing.
may be, okay.
So let's use this may be.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Bring our fear into the room with us. Ooh, that's
that's
a biggie.
Yeah, because when we say the word, I'm afraid of disappointing you, and I'm saying no, now we've given people a little bit of confusion. What are they supposed to respond to? Are they supposed to respond to our feelings, or are they supposed to respond to the fact that we said no? Are they supposed to take care of us in some way? So I don't want us to seek that out.
Okay.
So I want you to know inside of you what you're afraid of, but let's keep that inside. You say what the fear actually is.
Okay.
By this may disappoint you, this may upset you, this may make you angry. This may be hard for us to get through.
Oh, good.
And, whatever it is. And don't load up too many, by the way. Only pick one. You only get to have one greatest fear. You don't get to have 40 greatest fears, because there are some of you listening who, if we say, come up with your fear, you're going to come up with a list of like 40 fears. But I only want you to pick one.
All right. Oh, wow. That is such a great tool to have. Okay. So what stops us from asking for what we want? We talked about that a little bit. Do you have anything else to add on to what stops us?
What stops us from asking for what we want? Often it's us. We stop ourselves. Nobody usually has to come along and stop us. We stop ourselves. We are the obstacle, oftentimes, to what we want. And the great thing about being a therapist is what I often hear in this very safe, contained room. We're in my therapy office right now, in my little cabin in the woods, in my very safe, contained room. People say what they want. Oh, I really, really want blah, 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 or to do blah, 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 or whatever their dreams are for their life. And they don't feel like they can pursue that. So all the obstacles are the ones that we place on ourselves often. So what I'm looking for is, I trust that voice's wisdom. And how do we take baby steps, like you and I were just talking about? How do you take small steps towards that don't scare you so much, that allow you to begin? So let's say your dream was to be a writer.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you're going to quit your job tomorrow and write full time and look for a publisher, because that's probably, none of those are going to happen. None of that is the path to becoming a writer, right?
Yeah.
And so it may be that we then you look at, well, rather than just ignoring that dream or thinking, I can't do that, remove the obstacles and say, well, I can write for a half hour a week.
Yeah.
I can find a half hour. I can find an hour. I may take a writing class. If I want to improve and be a better writer, I may start attending book readings and meet other authors, right? And so suddenly your world starts getting populated with all the ways you can do this, because you've taken away the obstacles, but you do them in baby steps, right? That's how we achieve anything, is We go one step at a time, 1 foot at a time. That's how humans move through the world. And that's how we move through our obstacles. So, it may take years before you get to the place where you were like, oh, I've just published a book of poems,
Mm-hmm.
or what kind of writer are you? Turns out you're writing screenplays. And maybe you write, one every 10 years, whatever. I mean, who knows? Some people takes 20 years. It's not about time. Don't get hung up on how much time anything takes, especially if we're coming from a place of having been harmed as a kid. Because like I said, our realities in that were that you were dealing with a shattered place. And so that means that it takes longer, right? So we come back to it takes longer. Don't put time as a pressure on you to get anything that you want to go after. Don't judge yourself harshly and say, well, that person wrote their book in that much time, right? Because then we start judging ourselves and measuring ourselves against people maybe who weren't harmed as kids. And maybe they don't have a shattered place. And maybe they don't have to go through that shattered place in order to go anywhere in this world. And you do.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing self-compassion and rather than looking at the big asking ourselves, what are some little baby steps that we can do to get there?
Yes. Yes. And not worry about how long anything takes. Just set that to the side.
Okay. Yeah.
Does not matter.
Yeah.
I spent 16 years on the bunny hills learning to ski. Now, if you know anything about skiing, the bunny hill is where they put the toddlers. They're like 3 and 4 years old. They have a rope tow. I stand in the back of the line. And every year I would go and do the bunny hill because I was terrified of going down the bigger hills. And I eventually was able to do some of them, never more than just the beginner ones. But I found comfort just going back to the bunny hill every year.
Yeah.
And sometimes the teachers there would go, oh gosh, you're a natural at this. I was like, no, it's year 14.
Oh, that's self-compassion. So I think even more challenging than asking for what we want may be the saying no to another.
Yeah.
How do we find our courageous, brave voice to speak up and say no to someone?
Yeah. It's interesting that we wrap no with courage and bravery, and that we wrap all those things around the word no. We don't seem to wrap that as much around the word yes, although it does take just as much. But that no is often, when you've been harmed, a vote for yourself.
Mm. Mm.
So it's more about, can I hold myself in this and give myself permission? And can I vote for myself in this moment right here and say, that's a no for me? And it's often just about a vote for yourself and giving yourself, honestly, the support that you never had as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I think, as you explained earlier, that sense, Cheryl, of, not having anybody to kind of hold and protect and support. And so to support you as a little one. And I had a very similar experience, though I wasn't sexually abused. I was abandoned by both my parents. And I was very little, and their parental rights were terminated. And so it left me with a very shattered place. So I understand this, and I understand this walk around what it means to have nobody there really holding that part of you, right?
Yeah.
Or the people that had the job decided not to do the job or weren't on paying attention to the job or didn't care about the job, or they were the ones doing the harm, right?
Right.
So there is some part of us that has to grow a place where we can hold ourselves, where we can support ourselves. And so it's a very important act of healing and recovery to be able to hold ourselves with saying no and having permission for that and saying, I'm voting for me right now. And that's okay. Because there was never anybody holding that for us. There was never anybody voting for you and saying, I got you. I got you.
Mm.
But you've got to become that voice, as all adults do, but you really have to become that voice. That's what healing is to say, I got me. I
Mhm.
got me. I can count on me. I got this.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that little part of me can look at me who might be tired and exhausted and not need to do more and say, I got you. I'm taking care of this.
Mhm. Yeah, and it sounds like a commitment to self-care first. That by saying
Absolutely.
no.
That is the
Yeah.
number one thing. A big part of my work is about, before you even begin boundary work, is how do you begin self-care work? Because that to me is where it all begins. All the healing starts with self-care.
Mm.
And we can spend a lot of work and time on that. And that is a wonderful thing to do. And I have some free videos on that that are, that you can connect through my website or on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, and there are some self-care wheel, how to do a self-care wheel and how to explore your self-care. And I have a main
That's
course on
right.
this.
I've done your wheel every year for the past
Yeah,
2 years.
right. Because it
You did it
changes
this year, New
how
Year.
we do our
Yeah.
self-care is an evolving process, but it is the foundation to boundaries.
Yeah. I will link on the website to that. That's a great idea. Okay, good. So what are your top 3 skills for us to incorporate into our daily lives?
Number one is pay attention,
Uh-huh.
not to everything else around you, but pay attention to how you respond when people are angry. Pay
Ooh.
attention.
Ooh.
That's a very vulnerable place for people who have been harmed.
Oh yeah.
Is other people's anger can really twist you about
Yeah.
into all kinds of gymnastics of how do I please, how do I help, how do I fix, how do I make this better, how do I calm them down, how do I appease? No, 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 no. Pay attention to all the stuff that comes up when somebody gets angry in front of you.
Wow. Hmm. I feel a little teary right now because I really think that might be my work, my biggest work right now.
It's big work. It's
It's
big work. It's hard
yeah,
work. It's big work.
yeah,
Just pay attention. What happens when
yeah.
people get angry and what do you respond with? And I love that you just said that. Hey, that's my work. I
That
need to do that. That's right where I am at this moment. Because, even with self-care and even with this, we come back around.
mm-hmm.
We come back through it over and over again. We do it better. We do it more. That's why I do the self-care wheel every year, because it's not one and done. And it's, we're all in process. But pay attention to what happens when people get angry, because that is where we can lose our boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we end up doing things that we may resent later. That is where we kick ourselves for how we may have handled that situation. And that is where we need to skill up, tool up, so that we have choices
Mm-hmm. And
of
I do
what to do when somebody is very angry.
yeah, I do remember in your book, which I love, 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 and almost every page and every sentence is highlighted in it. It's such a great little book. So easy is we know we've crossed our own boundaries when we feel resentment.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one for me to pay attention to catch myself. Ooh, am I feeling resentment right now? Did I just did I just allow myself to? So that was a good one. I could tattoo that on my forehead. I do not want to go.
I love that. We could have like a boundary tattoo session. Okay, the second skill is make time to reflect every day. I like to reflect with my journal and I write, but maybe you reflect just by meditating or by thinking, or maybe it's not during meditation. Maybe you take a walk with yourself and you think through things. But during that reflection each day, I go over some of the things I may have committed to. And I check myself. I'm like, did I really want to do that? Do I really want to say no to that? It's like a little checklist of all the things that I need to make decisions about. And I might say, I'm not ready to make a decision. I'm going to put that on pause till Friday and I'll come back and look at it then. Or I might be like, how did I handle situations during the day? But there's a reflection time every day. And the third skill is, this is a tough one. I call it the rear view mirror. Correct any mistakes that you made. Go back and fix them. If you said yes to something that you wish you said no to, go back and fix it. That is how we become boundaries experts. Is once you know that you're totally accountable to you, you get much more careful about what you say yes to, because you know that if you screw that up, you're going to have to do the accountability walk, which is go back and correct it. If you don't correct it, you're not going to progress with your boundaries. It's like your soul, your compass inside of you is watching you. And it hears you say, oh, I wish I said no to that. And then you go back and you say, you know, I made a mistake. I agreed to do this and it's not a fit for me. So I am passing the baton. I am saying no for now. Somebody else can do this. And I'm going to back out because it's not a fit for me. And now I've corrected, which is the hardest part about boundary work, is going back and making these corrections. But once you make them, you're kind of more thoughtful going forward because you don't want to go back and do that. And so it starts making you more forward facing, paying better attention, listening to what people are asking you, because you don't want to go back and do these corrections. But I'm telling you that the only way to grow your boundaries is to go back and fix things.
Yeah. And so
if you've allowed someone to move into your house and they're not the right roommate for you, you need to change that.
So it's learning from our mistakes.
That's how we grow our boundaries. And that's how we get attuned to ourselves. Because we start listening better the first time when that little voice says, I don't want to do that. And we go, shh, this is a great opportunity. No, I don't want to do that. It's a great opportunity. Be quiet. I'm going to say yes. And then it's like, oh, I hate this. Why did I say yes to this? This is exhausting. And that little voice was like, I told you to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are going to empower and build up that muscle by.
And you're going to listen to your wisdom.
Yeah.
You're going to know every time that you have wisdom.
No
one can take that from you.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah, I love that. We're gonna really pay attention to our wisdom. All right, Sarri Gillman, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Great conversation. And
I will just say that on sarrigillman.com and the free boundary tips, signing up for the weekly newsletter, and the Boundaries TEDx are all ways to get more information about Sarri.
Yes, every week I send out these free boundary tips. They're an email. They're like 2 sentences long. And I now have like 3 years worth of tips.
Ooh,
probably another book in itself.
Definitely.
But there's nobody hired printing out boundary tips. This is something I do for all of you. Personally.
I've been getting them for 2 years, and I do not believe I've ever gotten the same one twice. And so all week long, I get to reflect on and think about incorporating into my life. It's very, very helpful for me remembering my boundaries.
Great. Well, thank you for what you're doing with Brave Voices, Cheryl. I think that you are changing the world. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the healing you're bringing to so many people.
Yeah, well, we're doing it right here. We're breaking the silence. We're talking about it. We're using our voices. So thank you for contributing to the goal of normalizing this conversation.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Sarri.